Today, it's Edwin's Monday evening property rant. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Welcome to today's post covering finance and property news. And it's a Wednesday, but it's still Edwin's Monday property evening rant. Hi Edwin, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine, Martin. I'm doing fine. We've got a bit of cold weather and some rain, but other than that, we're doing fine. We saw some tweets out there that you had a great weekend yourself.
Yeah, I was away, I confess. So the reason that I wasn't around on Monday was because I was sitting in the sunshine on the south coast of Devon with the two dogs. We went down for a few days, and first holiday in 8 years. Fantastic. And we had some good weather, and we took them on long walks, and I completely forgot about YouTube and DFA and modeling and everything else. I say first time in 8 years, so it was rather nice just to get away completely, but nice to be back. And we'll be back to our normal Monday rants as at next week, so apologies to everybody for the confusion about Mondays and Wednesdays, but still it was a holiday, you know. But it wasn't anything to do with cables, right?
Well, look, a couple of things. The first thing is Meteor and Dusty, they're talking. So Dusty's giving me a totally different story. And what's with his modelling? What are you modelling? Shorts? What are you modelling? Thongs, t-shirts, mankinis? What are you modelling, Martin?
I'll leave that to your imagination, Edwin. other than to say that the mortgage stress data came out, and it was even worse this month. So unfortunately, we've got more people falling over into difficulty. It's getting quite serious actually, and now with the expectation of interest rates being higher for longer, the long-term bond rates around the world have continued to rise, which effectively means that costs of funds to the banks are also higher. Costs for all the government spending is higher, and now the expectation is it's going to stay higher for longer. So unless we get a recession, which might make the RBA cut rates, the chances are rates are going to stay high for quite a long time. So that means that over time, more and more people are going to find it really, really difficult just getting through the day-to-day pressures. And
that doesn't stop the foxes, Martin.
No, they came back. Did they grab some more?
Yeah, they try to come back. But likewise, as you're saying, with the inflationary pressures on mortgages and on household stress and rental stress and the like of your modelling, it's a fox is a fox, like we've been saying, and the new premier of Victoria. She's also having a second bite. So I guess, look, but the question is what are the choices? What are the choices that the state governments have, right? Well, what are the choices that they have other than that, than just hammering away at the constituents, at the Aussie battlers, at the first home buyers? I mean, they got sacrificed so a long time ago, and lifting the taxes on. On property, council contributions, engineers and architects. I've been talking to engineers and architects this week, and it's mind-boggling how much money goes into the coffers of the local governments as well with regard to council contributions. How they're calculating now council contributions on a percentage of the overall gross realisation of a development project. It's no longer a fixed fee. They're getting greedier. So at all levels. So the foxes are coming back. Your data is only going to show, your modelling is only going to show more and more stress amongst the mortgage holders and the renters and people in general. I mean, shrinkflation is just getting beyond a joke. There's, you've heard of shrinkflation, stagflation, inflation, and there's the rottenflation, because, now that you go to restaurants, half the produce on the actual plate that you get served is it's almost rotten. So I'm calling that rottenflation, because you're paying $38, $39 for a a steak at a local pub. We used to pay $22. Now we're paying $39 for a steak and salad or steak and chips, and half the meal smells off because of you don't know how long it's been sitting around. So there's a lot of pressures, Martin, but the foxes keep on coming. We just got to keep on batting down the hatches and keep on preparing and guarding ourselves against these political foxes that just want to come in and take more.
I agree with that, and it's interesting. I don't know whether you saw, but this last week there was a Freedom of Information request made against the RBA relating specifically to any analysis they'd done with regard to financial stress and, particularly those with mortgages. And it's quite interesting reading the FOI response, which was a document of about, 20 pages or give or takes. A lot of it was wiped out, but there was some interesting stuff. They did actually mention my analysis as part of it. But what was interesting was they really don't have a good handle on what's going on. They were talking about debt servicing ratios. In other words, how much debt versus how much income people have. And they did acknowledge that things were a little bit awry there. They did also talk to a lot of debt counsellors and relayed specifically the concerns from debt counsellors that the number of people in difficulty are continuing to rise. But I got the feeling that they really weren't across just how it is really for many people on the front line at the moment. Now, I know there are some people who are doing fine. I had somebody yesterday say to me, you're talking about all this pressure. I'm fine. I've forward paid my mortgage. I've got sufficient income. Everything's fine. And that's great. There are some people who are doing well. But there are also people who are really now up against it. In the rental sector, as we've discussed many times, and also in the mortgage sector at the moment. And I think that with these rates going to stay high for long, it's going to really grind forward over the next 12 months or so. And then you're right, the other factor is if you look at my business surveys, a lot of those in the hospitality sector are really struggling because the input costs for their businesses have shot through the roof. And that means that they've got to find ways to cut corners to be able to actually keep prices somewhere reasonable or just charge like a wounded bull. So the whole economy is now being sort of strangulated by all of these rate decisions and everything else that's been going on. And as you say, unfortunately, the political class are just they're doing what they normally do. Look the other way and say nothing to see here, and continue to do the old same old same old.
Yeah, and this is the scary part. But I mean, it's a given. It's a common thread throughout history and moving forward. So hence the reason why we're saying you just got to batten down the hatches and prepare. That's what we've been telling our followers, our viewers, to prepare on all areas and all sides from lease agreements to looking very carefully as to what they're going to purchase, because there's nothing more savory to well, I don't know what you want to call them, to the bargain hunters, the vultures, the investors, the WeChat chatterers, whatever you want to call them, whatever, they come in from all walks of life. It's not that we're having to go at the WeChat chatterers, but that's the gist out there, Martin, in the main with the investment groups. With the WeChat chatter investment groups, and we're seeing it. Even some of the Twitterati and the Twitter pundits and commentators are also being forced to go out and inspect homes themselves, because there's a lot of pressure at home to buy a home, to give the families a safe and longevity of accommodation. Rentals are a bit shaky, which we'll discuss that later on in the show. And this is all these pressures are coming on from all sides. And as I said, the first time buyers, unfortunately, they got sacrificed with ScoMo and Co Real Estate Agency, and Albo and Co Real Estate Agency are just are driving the final nails in the coffin. From what we can see, unless you've got a really hefty, or you've got mum and dad support, or you've got some sort of support, some sort of a big deposit. I mean, some areas in Sydney are just becoming insanely unaffordable for the first-time buyers. And this is where panic sets in, Martin. And this is where the WeChat chatterers have been talking about. The second wave and the second wave of panic buying that they called the first wave in February 2020. This year, early this year, and they jumped in, and we saw that, and the mainstream reported it, 2-3 months down the track, and now this is what they've been preparing is for that second wave, and lo and behold, it all centers around the Moon Festival, where they give each other red envelopes, as I put up on the tweet. And they've got plenty of cash. They are cashed up, and they're going out there and buying. And there's a lot more people, more WeChat chatterers, and also the silent tigers that that I've been saying. The community, the Indian community, are also going out there for the same reason, that they don't want to miss out, and they want to secure their families. Both sides. The WeChat chatterers and the silent tigers, is because they both pay a lot of attention to the school catchment areas, and more so to with views and outlooks and being close to the water. But this is for that same token, the WeChat chatterers are out there looking and really looking outside of where they would otherwise buy, because of what they can do to the properties, and around the aspect of budget accommodation, and the tigers do the same. So that's what the chatterers are doing, and it all comes around this whole area of panic, stress, and the unfortunate aspect of people that are in need. They'll get rid of as much as they can around the periphery. They'll get rid of the toys, any type of investment, savings. The principal places of residence are the last things to go. But by hook or by crook, one way or another, the pressure becomes too much. They, for whatever reason, don't want to put their hand up and seek help, or approach the banks. They feel compelled to let properties go and move on or move further afield, so they can have more of a peace of mind. And that's where the WeChat chatterers are going to. That's the local chatterers are going to be jumping in. And it so happens that this Saturday, Super Saturday for auctions, as the Saturday numbers have almost doubled in Sydney, given that the fact that there were low numbers for the last week for the because of the grand final, and the footy and the long weekend and school holidays and the like. But now this is big. We'll see what the turnouts are, and we'll see what happens. But as for the WeChat chatterers in the from the mainland China, nothing's much being said there. Nothing's much coming out. Obviously, for obvious reasons, because it is apart from the Moon Festival, it is the national day. So everything's on pretty much on standstill, or you could say a media blackout.
Yeah, interesting, Edwin. And a couple of things just to pick up from that. You mentioned Bank of Mum and Dad. My latest data on the Bank of Mum and Dad, but which, by the way, is not just mum and dad, but also grandparents now and other relatives are all chipping in to try and help first-time buyers get into the market. So we had a dip earlier in the year. Well, it started to rise again. So the volume and the value of help for first-time buyers from the Bank of Mum and Dad is now rising again. Still quite low compared with where it was previously. And then the second point is that the latest stress data from my modelling, again, it shows that mortgage stress is now above 50% for the first time. So more than half of people with mortgages have cash flow issues, which is pretty crazy. And then, the number in the rental sector with stress is also very high. So we are really at the pointy end now. But I also want to make the point that you've just highlighted. If people are being forced to sell, and there is some evidence of that, then there are willing purchasers, whether they are WeChat chatterers or whatever, who effectively are going to be able to come in and hoover up some of those properties. But we also have a feeling that some of the similar behaviors that we saw in the US with some of those big property purchasers who actually came up and hoovered thousands and thousands of properties, you know, in the US, could actually now be also functioning here in Australia too. So you can expect, I think, as distressed sales continue to rise, we're going to see quite a lot of buying, but not from your standard purchaser, not from, you know, just a single purchaser who's doing a normal transaction. But there's a lot of other stuff going around below the surface, and I think we're going to see a lot more of this.
Look, 100%, Martin, and this is something that the dynamics that are playing out on the ground, you know, in a lot of cases are vastly different from what's been reported or what the property reporters in the mainstream media that sit on the you know, in the warm lounge rooms or studies or cool studies as we're going into summer, punching away articles with no real understanding of what's happening on the ground and how the shifting, the sands are shifting on the ground. There are two stories altogether. So what we see on the ground in a lot of cases is totally different to what we see, what the mainstream media reflect. And then you've also got the emotion as well, right? So, but as we've said before, with all this comes also you've got a lot of confusion. You've got a lot of confusion out there. People are selling out. In my opinion, prematurely. There are others that have got no choice but to sell because of the personal age. The age of the homes, they can't maintain them anymore. Retirement accommodation in retirement villages or retirement homes, that they haven't gone backwards over the last 3 years. That's perhaps one of the sectors that's continued to climb in value, and they're in they're drip fed into the market. And the other thing is where people. The older generation that are coming to that tenure of selling their homes, they want to stay locally, but they can't, and they're almost forced to stay in somewhat derelict situations or conditions, with the homes, in some cases falling around them, because they can't move, they can't maintain, they can't afford the cost of simple repairs to maximise the price. So all these things are playing out. So we just got to be careful as to, as I said in a previous in a tweet with a mainstream commentator, as I said, a lot of people don't understand why. You got to understand why people are selling and what they're selling, and you also got to understand, like you're talking about, Martin, is who's buying. And what are they as well, outside of the WeChat chatterers, outside of the tigers, outside of the those under the wife effect pressure, family pressures. Outside of that, now you've got this this fourth and a very strong arm, what would you call it? A private enterprise starting to look at property once again differently to what you and I would look at, or a first-time buyer would look at. They're looking at long-term investment funds, and this is where we're going to start seeing a lot of this play out, because a lot of these institutional purchasers are going to be, in the most part, purchasing development sites in areas where the state governments are going to re-gazette or change the building policies and regulations, force the local governments to adhere to their new policies and regulations around development, because they need those numbers. Otherwise, they fall flat on their face with the political promises. Now, regardless of whether they build anything, but they've got to be seen to be doing something, right? And this is what I've also put up on Twitter, and the discussion that I've had with people on Twitter, and that is, what the developers are doing, why they're not currently building, and what are they waiting for. And in the most part, Martin, they're waiting for that government handout, which we'll also talk about a bit later on, as to why construction is almost at a standstill at a 10-year low. Average-wise, although there's been a 7% approval rate for the month, but yet we're still trending 10 years below the trending below the 10-year average in terms of approvals and construction, and it's only going to get worse before it gets better. That's the sad part.
Well, let's talk about some of the political stuff. So, I mean, there is a very strong political dimension in all this, isn't there? And I suppose, you could talk about Jacinta and some of the things that is going on there to try and give the things a bit of a shove in a particular direction. And if you look at some of the recent commentary, there's this one here. This is from the Property Council of Australia. Our clear message to the landowners is to sell or to develop the land. So, I mean, what's going on, Edwin? It's pretty concerning what we're seeing.
Yeah, look, it is. It's interesting. Look, you've got to appease your whoever they think is putting them in power, right? This is with regards to the state governments. You've got to appease the people that are calling out the younger generation, the first home buyers, in the most part, and that's just my observation. In which they one would believe, or I'm of the opinion that the majority of the votes that they got, whether it be through the alliances with the Greens and with those parties, the Labor government were able to get into power in most states. So you've got to be seen to be doing something, and having a go at the property holders in the one part, or investors, and by the new Premier of Victoria, putting out these taxes, or calling, saying this is, we're going to tax them, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But it's farcical, because on the one hand saying, yeah, they're going to be taxed, but on the other hand, you've also got to be, the tax on these vacant properties is one that you're going to be taxed on if you put your hand up to say, hey, I've got a vacant property. Can you come and can you send me a bill, please?
Tax increased and made mandatory. Right now, the only people paying a vacancy tax are owners who tell the government their home has been sitting empty.
When you have a really weak system that's not enforced, and you have this opt-in system, people are going to lengths to avoid paying these taxes.
Holiday homes will be exempt.
I mean, who's going to do that, right? But then again, it goes back to everything else that we've been speaking about for years. And Lindsay David and Philip Sues were one of the first, mainstream and also social economists that were calling out the politicians' portfolios from over a decade ago, the property portfolios that they have, and they were calling them out on it. And it's only now that people have waken up to the fact that a lot of what they say is just hot air. It's really hot air. And then for the treasurer of the Property Council of Australia to say, well, if you're sitting on, for the landowners, it's either develop or sell it to someone that will develop. I mean, again, that's farcical, because construction costs are going through the roof. You can't turn soil unless you've inherited the land, and unless you bought the land over 5 years ago or 10 years ago to get a development application in council. A lot of developments just don't make sense. Don't make economic sense. Don't make a profit, and therefore developers will sit it out. The other thing is that I've seen across Twitter is a lot of the Twitterati going on and beating the drum, saying, "Oh yeah, it's about time the government's going to start taxing the landholders and this and that." Hold on a minute. You don't know which house or amalgamation of houses really constitutes a development site until or unless you do a search on the council website, or unless you're familiar with the zonings or what developers are looking for. So until they register that or the approval, they've got a stamped approval. It's just residential housing. So it's really blanks that they shoot out from when they get control of the of the government, and they start shooting out blanks. They make a lot of noise, but in most instances, the policies and their statements that really got no backbone or no substance when you really look at it, right? But the other thing is, Martin, with all this, right? The other thing is with Victoria. I mean, because we like to pick on Victoria, because Robbie Barwick lives there, it's the fact that they're in such a mess. And it seems to me like Jacinta Allen is only going to get them in a worse situation than what Dan got them into, and it's only going to deter business that would want to set up there. Why would you want to set up there if the taxes are just going through the roof? Which is what we spoke about a few weeks ago as well. We've been speaking about, and that is, who dares go down to Victoria to set up a business to only be taxed to pay back the billions of dollars, the hundreds of billions of dollars that they owe. So it's on the one hand, it looks it's they're going to shoot straight, but most of it's just blanks. That's why I look at it, and time's going to tell. Time's really going to tell what people are going to do. So we just let this play out in Victoria. But the changes in New South Wales, you've got more craziness with the New South Wales politicians as well. I mean, they're beating the chest. I mean, Chris Minns is beating his chest. In one of his tweets, he puts over the next 12 months, 400 social houses will begin construction right across New South Wales. With more than half beginning in the next 6 months. That'll grow to around 1,500 by 2028. And I like this guy, Kooky or Kook, replied to Mints and says, with current immigration numbers and assuming Sydney gets 33%, with 4 people per home, 1,500 homes evaporates in 10 days. I thought that was a classic. I just had to retweet him. I thought it was the tweet of the day. I mean, he really trolled him, Chris Minks, because they're beating the chest, and they're also and Albanese as well has come forward, with what Albo and Co Real Estate projects is going to build. It's the beginning of 11 dwellings or social homes, across what I figured to be is going to be in Riverwood, and they're going to demolish 3 homes to put up 11 townhouse apartment-like dwellings on 1,500 square meters. Well, they should have been doing this a while back. It's a start. It's interesting how but this is social housing. Of course, this isn't really to do with the with the other pressures in the private sector. But this is more to do with social housing. But 11 is not enough. My question is how much is it going to cost? When are they going to be delivered? And how often will be delivered? Because the cost of construction is certainly not getting any cheaper, Martin.
Well, you've touched on, I think, a fundamental issue here, which is what I call the announceables problem, right? All the politicians, whether they're at the state or the federal level, want to be seen to be doing things, and they want to sort of use social media and the other channels to be able to actually shout from the rooftops that they're doing something. The trouble is that the some things they're talking about are, from a real impact perspective, so small as to be a blip. Now, I'm not saying that they shouldn't be doing some of these things, but it's not enough. It's not sufficient to be able to deal with the size of the housing crisis that we have, with so many people unable to afford to buy property or even to rent property, with migration still sitting at around 400,000 per annum. And, that's another very important factor in all of this in terms of demand. And the fact that you can convert 3 properties to 11 properties for seniors, and it solves something, but it doesn't really solve anything at the sort of the scale level. And so the scale of the problem that we've been left now because of 20 to 30 years of stupidity from both state and federal means that we've got a housing crisis that's going to take a generation to fix. So I'm afraid that I'm very skeptical that the announceables are anything more than just trying to be seen to be doing something. And then, of course, as you mentioned, you've got this massive question about the cost of construction, because I'll tell you something, the cost of construction ain't falling, is it?
No, it's not. And with the announceables, I think I like that. But don't you just love the numbers that they put out? I mean, 400. We're going to build 400 in the next 12 months. And you could go to the neighbour and say, listen, the state government's going to build 400 homes in the next 12 months. It sounds grandiose, I think. But but I just loved it. I loved that tweet by Kooky. Anyway, look, the cost of construction isn't going to get any cheaper. It's not going to get any cheaper. We've been raising these points over the last 6-12 months. We eluded our followers and our viewers from last year when the proposed changes were going to be were discussed amongst the industry bodies, in particular HIA and all its members. We started talking about the changes to the construction code. How that was going to, the new construction code that came into force early this year. Then we also discussed how the basics we're going to play in a major role in the cost of construction by the end of this year. But even without that being implemented, which is just looming really, but hasn't been fully implemented. The cost in general has gone. The cost to build has continued to rise, and albeit with this with this increase in immigration skilled migrants, but unfortunately what we see the trend on the ground is that most of these skilled migrants don't want to go into the construction industry. It's too hard. It's too tedious for them, and they're looking at greener pastures. And that's one of the factors that we've been discussing for a very long time. Now, the other thing that we've spoken about is nobody that gets given a green light to charge like a wounded bull wants to return back to the lower values per hour rate that they may have been getting 6 months ago, 12 months ago, or 24 months ago. I don't know what you think about that, Martin, but once you start charging, let's round it up to $100 an hour. Who really wants to go be in the same industry and go backwards to where some of the trades were at $45 an hour 24 months ago?
No, well, it's a very interesting tweet, and it's quite a long tweet, but I've left it up on the screen so people can look at it. But the thing that stood out for me were the crane operators. Working in the high-rise sector. I mean, those are big numbers for crane operators. I wish I could do that.
Well, we're never too old, Martin. I was thinking about that. We just have to go and do a course. We'll probably drop some heavy gear on some of the politicians walking around town, but it's just one of those things. It's interesting because I guess that was really to highlight from what I've been told from architectural firms and the developers that I've been talking to over the last week that are involved with 40, 50, 60, $100 million projects. And look, some of the figures, and this is the thing that when the unions started gaining control again of the work sites, this is what a lot of developers have been saying, is that it's chalk and cheese for what you pay for somebody on a union site that's controlled by the unions. What you pay on one that comes under a different mantle, and the pay packets are vastly different. Even to a class one labourer, you could be 30% apart in wages, and these are the costs imposed by unions. And I haven't even, they're talking to me. I've got to still make heads or tails of all the information that they've been sharing with me. They're talking to me about daily, hourly rate, extra charges. And if you've got a project from that's worth 5 million to 10 million, then it goes from 10 million to 16 million, then from 16 million to 20 million, and depending on the value or the gross realization of the project, will determine how much more you have to pay the union members. It's on a per hour. I mean, it goes from an extra 60 cents right up to an extra $4, $7 per hour. I mean, it all adds up. So all these costs are adding up. And as I said months ago in one of our podcasts, I said, if people believe that builders are going to charge less because they can get contractors or subcontractors to at a lower contract rate, but if they think that the builders are going to charge charge them less, well, you know what, Dusty still has 10,000 shares in a banana straightening invention that she wants to list on the ASX, and she's happy to sell them to you. I mean, it's not going to happen, Martin. Not now. The only way that construction costs are going to get any cheaper, per se, is a quid pro quo. By the state government again intervening, and the federal and the state governments intervening in the way that construction is done. Now, we know, and we've already discussed again, almost a year ago, we started talking about how I raised the issue around construction, how developers were going to be gifted extra yield on their project. So let's say, for example, if in Parramatta, for example, you could build on 1,200 square meters of land close to the CBD, you could build 75 apartments, high-rise development, because of they allowed you to break the height restrictions in order to get more on there, as long as you allot some of those apartments for affordable housing. By way of selling to investors that will then put those investment properties or put them out to into the rental market under some sort of affordable housing scheme, or you also sell some of the apartments to under affordable housing scheme to public public employees, like you've got your nurses, fireys, police officers, school teachers, and the like. And what you're going to be gifted is a higher yield on that development. So it's a quid pro quo. So it's a watch this space, Martin, because what they're telling me is that it's all going to really unfold and really come to. The mainstream media are going to really pick this up, but it won't be until the second quarter of 2024. And a lot of the people that are holding on to these parcels of land that can be subdivided, that can be that you could get a DA for medium density, high density developments. They're just waiting until the government put their hand in the pocket and start throwing a lot more money at the construction industry in order for them to be able to make it work. Because at $520,000 per lot or per apartment on a high-rise development on average, the cost to build, it doesn't make sense. You can't. Not many development sites, as I said, unless you bought them over 5 years, 10 years ago, you're not going to. The bank isn't going to fund you, because the bank, based on the bank's figures and the bank's due diligence, unless you're going to make a profit that they're going to be secure with, they're not going to give you the construction funding. So this is what's unfolding, what's holding back construction. And at the same time, we've got the HIA saying that 50% of the industry are trading insolvent. I mean, that's crazy, Martin. But so you start thinking about all this shit that's going on, right? And you start thinking about all this stuff. You start thinking, hold on a minute. The workers are getting paid a mozza, yet construction companies are trading insolvent. Why? Why? So of course the net effect to a lot of this is that established dwellings are going to be continue to creep up in price in many areas, and watch this space. I know some of our followers don't like me saying it, but you just got to follow the numbers. Many parts of Sydney are yet to rise in value by another 10, 12% over the next 18 months because of the lack of property on the market and the reluctance of people in those areas to put the properties on the market, because we've seen a lot of different trends evolving, emerging, reappearing, in order to save the principal places of residence, in order to maintain the roof over their heads. And whilst there's little stock on the market, and also whilst there's little rental stock on the market for people to sell, then take a breather. You could say rent something locally until they find something further afield or get resettled. But we don't have any of those items or those ingredients on for that recipe to lower the cost of housing. So we really are in a quagmire, Martin, as far as at the moment. And as you said, this problem isn't going to be fixed over a year or two or three. This could end up being one of the one that's only going to have traction or momentum or positive momentum, as of example, over 5 years, after 5 years, and as you said, it could be a generational problem. And that's what, 40 years.
Yeah, and just my observation, there are two levers that can be pulled at the moment. The first is, as you say, developers putting their hand out to the states and saying, give us more money to do things, right? The other variable is the quality of construction. So if you can use cheaper materials, if you can cut corners, if you can essentially throw stuff up quicker, then that actually makes it a little bit more feasible. But of course, what you're doing then is actually laying problems for later, because as you know and I know, the quality of construction for many places continues to degrade. And so what we're doing is we're building stuff where we are building stuff, but at very, very low quality, which means it's going to degrade much more quickly than we've been used to, which means that properties are not actually worth the paper they're written on.
No, and this is why established dwellings are gaining a lot more value, and they'll continue to do so whilst there's short supplies on both ends of the spectrum, from the rental to sales on market. Look, the lever that needs to be pulled, and you and I were the first to start talking about it, which was we knew that we're going to pull, was immigration. Because we started talking about the changes to the pathways to PR, when ScoMo was still in power, and the mainstream media and a lot of the economists and everybody else were asleep at the wheel. It was pushed through, in the midnight hours, when everybody was asleep. But you and I were on the money. We called it then, and we said there is a reason why, regardless of who. You and I said back before the election was even called, or when there were notions that the election was going to be called. You and I were saying that hold on a minute. Why were the changes in the pathways to PR? Why were they made? To reclassify regions and just to make it easier, basically, for people to obtain permanent residency. Why was all that changed? And then all of a sudden, everything went quiet, and now we know why. Because this lever, was always going to be pulled. The question is, obviously, would ScoMo Real Estate and Co. Would it have been as bad as what it is? I don't know. We're not. We don't have that knowledge. Perhaps maybe not as bad, but I can tell you what, it still would have been, pretty close to the dire situation that we're faced in. We're faced in now, because they're both. They're both culprits, and they're in cahoots. So regardless, whether you're a lib or a lab, it's the wings of the same vulture, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and it's interesting because this migration question is not just an Australian question. So in the UK here, we've had very strong migration, 500,000 people coming in. But now people at the political level are actually raising significant questions about it. And so they're now talking about dialing it back and making some changes, but they were responsible for it, right? So again, both sides of government, in Australia and elsewhere around the world, both sides of government have pulled the migration lever without thinking about the consequences. And of course, the consequences are that it floats through into the property sector specifically, and particularly in the rental sector first, but then of course more broadly too. So it's a major mess, and nothing that I've seen so far from the incumbents in Australia suggests that they've got any real plan for dealing with it. A lot of announceables, but that's all. Well, let's move on and just talk briefly about the numbers, because we like to look at the data, and what we'll do is we'll start with the Sydney numbers first. So this is as at the 27th of September, and we had 16,828 on, and if we then jump forward to the 4th of October, 16,789. So not a lot to see there. And while we're at it, let's look at Melbourne. So on the 27th of September, 24,595, and on the 4th, 25,719. So really, not a lot to see.
Yeah, Melbourne is the only city region that it's going up in terms of numbers on market. I guess people still don't feel that the new changes to the government is going to make the state a lot better. But like we said, we won't really know until the end of the year how that migration pattern unfolds. Whether people are going to be more keen to go back, or simply it's just going to get worse and people are going to leave. But look, there's been a bit of chatter today with SQM numbers coming out saying that this September has been the highest new listings on market recorded over the last 10 years. Look, I don't know, Martin, but I haven't been seeing that. We haven't been seeing that for the last 3 years, in particular this year. And as I put out in that my response to that tweet that Tarek put out earlier today, saying it's going to be interesting to see what happens. What happens moving forward? We could have a ball game or something along those lines. Well, you know what? Regardless, what's overshadowing or eclipsing any notion of more numbers coming on market is the demand. Whilst this phenomenon, whilst this beast is open at the borders, it's not going to. It's not really making a dent. And as I said, some of the Twitterati that are now sort of getting chills up their spine because their partners are putting a bit of pressure, and they're out there on open house inspection midweek now because they can see that things aren't going back in many areas. So, and that's the fact. That is a fact. So whilst the numbers remain very low, things are only going to get are only going to get tighter. As I said last week, I've got my fingers and toes, and so does Dusty and Evan. They've got their little paws crossed that we don't see another 22 scenario where towards the end of the end of spring, people were reluctant to put the properties on the market because there was a lot of confusion around to what was really happening at the time. So we're still remaining, as far as I'm concerned, within with this Mexican standoff, and it's playing out in favour of those that do have properties on the market. And as you've been saying over and over again, the dogs are being sold. The dogs are being sold at hefty prices, and this is where people just got to be extra careful, not to get too tied up and not to get too emotional and caught up with that auction understream that we've discussed on the show as well.
Did you mention dogs? No, those dogs aren't for sale. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a mess, as we've said. Whichever way you look at it, it's a mess. And the rental sector is as bad too. So these are the rental numbers for Sydney. So if you go back to the 27th of September, 8,628, and if you then skip forward to the following Wednesday, 8,700. So a very minor lift, but those numbers are still well down compared with what you might expect to see. And we've also got the national picture, which just really underscores again 39,160 properties. That's on the 27th of September, and then 39,463 on the 4th of October. So once again, these are very low numbers, aren't they, Edwin?
Oh, look, they are. We were looking at the national numbers. We used to see, over 20,000 in Sydney, in the Sydney region alone.
Yeah.
And as I said before, we used to see 8,000 and above in the Blacktown LGA alone. So this is the impact that a lot of these government policies have created, and the pressure that a lot of people feel. Now, in some parts, again, you've got to be careful where you're looking at, like sales, rentals are the same thing. Yep. Some areas are in terms of rental prices, they're coming down a little bit, which is a good thing for those that are looking, which is generally more towards the top end. When I say the top end, anything above $1,500 right up to $6,000 a week. So you got to be flush, and you got to have a good income, and you got to have a good reason to want to be in those areas and want to be renting those homes. But look, in some parts, the Twitterati have been reminding us on a regular basis how some homes have dropped in the rental asking prices. But in the areas where it most affects the everyday Joe, the everyday person, in that bracket, it's just hard to get a rental, hard to get a good rental, and there are more and more conditions. I shared the situation where one of my tradie friends finds himself in the proverbial caca now because it's not so much that he can't afford to pay an extra $200, $300 a week to stay in the area, but it's that people are being more cautious as to who they're renting the properties to, particularly when he comes with a family that have got 5 cars, a work van or a couple of work vans, and a lot of tools, and he's in the paint trade, so a lot of tools and materials that could potentially damage the property or damage the driveways and in the garage area to an extent. I mean, but how do you accommodate that, or where do you put those cars if it's a house in a narrow street? So you got all these added things that people are looking at. So it's not just people that have got pets that got issues, but there are a lot of other issues that people have, or a lot of other things that they've got to accommodate in order to get practical accommodation. Like I said, many people will pay the extra, but it's trying to find the property that suits them or fits their needs that's becoming harder and harder with less choice on market.
Absolutely right. That's a nice summary. And as we come to the end of the show, we've still got time for tip of the week. And once again, we're going to touch on some of the auction dynamics, or actually how to avoid auction dynamics in the first place.
Following that thread of tips around auctions. Well, look, one of the things that we always try to do, we'll try to buy the property before auction, buy the property at auction, and obviously after the auction or after the actual auction on the day still, or even after the weekend. So, but the thing is, you got to try your hardest to try and buy it prior to the auction, and it's not easy. It's very it's a difficult process, especially in this type of market. But there are occasions where you can swoop in, and you've got to look for the angle. And when I say you got to look for the angle, you got to look for a couple of main things. One is, what's the agent's motivation? What does the agent want, or what does he need? Look through the agent's profile. Look how many properties they've sold recently, over the last few weeks, over the last few months, and that'll give you a clear indication as to what kind of money they're making, right? So if you get an idea of whether or not they're desperate for a sale, because you can see that they haven't made much of a sale. So they're going to be very, very motivated to sell the property before auction. And because the quicker the sale, the quicker the commission goes in the pocket, the quicker they can spend it, and so forth. So that's one of the things, one of the angles that you look for. And the other one is try to find out what the owner's needs are. Now, a little bit different to motivation. What are the owner's needs? Sometimes the owners will sell to you quicker because they're committed on a property they've already purchased. They're retiring. To them, not achieving an extra 50, 60, 70,000 at the auction doesn't really mean a lot when they bought the property, when they've had the property in their name or in their hand for from day dot, from the early 60s, 70s, whatever. So you try to put these things together. And I say this with one of our clients, our followers, is we achieved a purchase of a property before the auction, when we believe, and I'm totally convinced and of the opinion that should that property have gone to auction, the agent would have achieved anywhere between an extra $100,000 to $150,000 on the day. When you do comparable analysis on what's selling in the area, how the area is trending. So that's one thing. The other thing is we could have negotiated, and I believe our clients had another $30,000 to $50,000 to throw at it, because they themselves knew that the property, in our opinion, if we're able to get it before the auction, we were going to get it a lot cheaper than what he would have sold at the auction anyway. But the clincher, in my opinion, was the agent's motivation, and the agent was an out of area agent to an extent. It was a bit out of area. The long weekend was coming up, so they didn't want to be tied up, for the auction over the long weekend and open house inspections and the like. So the vendors need They also wanted a quick sale. So, all the ducks lined up, Martin. But this is what you got to look for. Now, not always are these things going to happen. Not always are these the ducks are going to line up for you. But this is what you got to try and do, and that is your mission is to try and buy the property before auction. Now, there are other ways, obviously, that you're going to buy a property before auction, is that by making a silly and crazy offer, well and truly above what the expectations are. But that's not. I don't recommend that method. If you're going to do that, might as well play the game on the day.
Yeah, no, good point.
Then you can apply that to a different strategy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just to sort of give you an example, when I bought this property, and of course I did it long distance, so I inspected it via Zoom. And got a building structural survey done. But I found out a lot about the vendors, and I realized that they actually had some specific needs, and I was able to shape my offer in terms of flexibility, in terms of completion date, and cash on the table rather than actually having to sell something. So there was no chain, all of those things, and in a way that flexibility and ability to be able to actually tailor a solution that met the vendor's needs actually was the reason I was able to get the property. There were other people interested, but quite a few of them had much more complex situations. And so doing the research on the vendor of the property and why they're motivated to sell and what are they trying to achieve, I think is a really, really critical part of going through the process of understanding how to negotiate and how to come to a point of view. And it wasn't about price, ultimately, but it was about meshing their plans with my plans and showing that I was flexible and agile. And also, I knew the area, knew the property, so it was actually a low risk. It amazes me how often prospective purchasers don't ask some of those simple questions when they absolutely should.
And it makes a lot of sense, because one of the things that this vendor needed as well was the house was just too big, too old for them to maintain, elderly, and they were very keen and interested on an apartment that was for sale nearby in an adjoining suburb to where we bought. And one of the key elements to this was I said to the real estate agent, listen, I'll make sure that my vendor solicitors cross out the section in the special conditions that the deposit won't be released. I'll make sure that the deposit is released, so that if they do like it, that they can also make an offer and can be settled, and that they can have certainty on the purchase on the other side as well. And if they need to settle earlier, my clients are in the position to be able to settle earlier as well. So that is 100%, Martin. And there are other things, and there are other ways you can also find out. We've got an eye out on a property again that's just hit the market. It's in the North Shore, and we've done our background on the vendor. And it appears that it's a messy divorce situation, and one of the parties wants out ASAP. So when we heard that they want out ASAP, that told me that they're prepared to take anywhere between a 5 to 10% haircut, regardless of the fact that it's in a hot area, in a hot market, but that's just it. It's just a natural, and also more to the point, our client in that area, she sold 6 months ago, and she's the cash is in the bank, literally all of it, and so we'll have a good crack at that one as well. So as you say, it's very, very important to find out, and there are ways. And I do not recommend stalking the vendors, particularly if they're still living in the home. Not stalking the tenants. There is a law against stalking, and knocking on the door after 5 o'clock. So please do not do that. That is not what we are recommending.
No. There are official means, and it's very important to do that. Edwin, as always, some real important gems there, and some insights that are extremely valuable. So thank you very much for that. And I'm pleased to say we'll be back to our normal Monday schedule as at next Monday. So I'm looking forward to another chat relatively soon. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll keep tracking this really weird market that's going on at the moment.
See you Monday, man. Look after yourself. Take care.
Okay, take care. Thanks. Bye-bye.